Generation 2. Some claim this to be the best generation of Pokemon, while others claim it to be the most overrated generation of Pokemon. But regardless of what you think of Generation 2, one thing is for certain, there is a lot, and I mean a lot, of cut content. And in this video, we will be focusing on the cut Pokemon specifically, as there are quite a lot of Pokemon who just didn't make it into the games. Just like the video I made for Generation 1's cut Pokemon, I'll go through each Pokemon one by one and sharing as much information about them as possible, including typings and this time movesets. All the resources used for this video can be found in the description, alongside the music I've used and a link to the designers who have made the illustrations you're about to see. I also have to make it clear that a lot of the information for this video is from a demo. The information may be incomplete in regards to levels, typings, and finalized names. This video is made using only the resources and facts currently available. So let's get into it, starting with the Pokemon included in the 1997 Space World demo, which was a playable demo for Pokemon Gold and Silver from the Nintendo Space World event, which was a yearly event from 1989 to 2001. It was the primary event for Nintendo to show off new consoles, games, and accessories, pretty much in the same way E3 does today. And we will start with the cut evolutions, just like last time. Let's start off with Pooty. Pooty was supposed to serve as a baby evolution to Growlithe, with the name translating to Petite Growlithe. You might recognize Pooty from the Generation 1 video. As is the case with a few more Pokemon from that video, they were also planned for Generation 2. Pooty was a pure Fire-type Pokemon who would evolve into Growlithe at level 13. There was an overload of planned baby Pokemon with a total of 17, which got cut down to 7, which might be one of the reasons why Pooty didn't make it. One of the weirder cut baby Pokemon is what was supposed to serve as the pre-evolved form of Grimer. Its name translates to Grimer Baby. It was a pure poison type and would evolve into Grimer at level 19. We also have quite a unique cut evolution of Ditto, named Animon. One of the things that make this Pokemon unique is that in the demo it is categorized as a normal type Pokemon. However, Ditto evolves into Animon using a metal coat, just like other Pokemon like Onix, leading many to believe that Animon was supposed to be a steel type. It's hard to tell if this would really be an improvement of Ditto, as they both still only learn Transform. There are also fans who believe that Animon could have become Meltan in newer games. And we're back at it with baby Pokemon. That being the baby evolution to Doduo. It would evolve into Doduo at level 16 and was a normal and flying type Pokemon, just like Doduo and Dodrio, and it was based on a bird's nest. It serves as a very confusing Pokemon, as this Pokemon has 3 heads, Doduo has 2 heads, and then it would go back to having 3 heads, which probably didn't help it make it into the games. Staying with the baby Pokemon, we have yet another Pokemon that was also cut from Generation 1, being this pre-evolved version of Meowth. The name could be translated to Coined Meow, and it was a pure normal type, though it might give some psychic type resemblances with the floating coins, and it would evolve into Meowth at level 14. There was also a cut baby evolution to Goldeen, which was also cut from both Generation 1 and 2. Its name translates to Lively Goldfish, and it was a pure water type that would evolve into Goldeen at level 16. There was supposed to be an evolution to Farfetch, long before the introduction of Sirfetch'd, known as Madame, who would evolve from Farfetch at level 24. Madame was a normal and flying type Pokemon that appears to be based on a swan. Though Farfetch now has an evolution, it is a slight possibility that we could get a gender-branched evolution line with Sirfetch'd and Madame Fetch. Mekon, who was also cut from Generation 1, is the baby evolution to Vulpix. Its name translates to 3 fox barks, and it would evolve into Vulpix at level 13. The weird thing about Mekon is that it is categorized as a water-type Pokemon. The typing you see in the top corner is not a mistake. But like I said in the beginning of the video, this is from a demo and not a finalized product. It was most likely supposed to be a fire type. There was also supposed to be an evolved form of Pinsir, with its name translating to Plux. It would evolve from Pinsir at level 42, and it was a pure bug type Pokemon. This Pokemon may not have been entirely cut, as there is a bug type Pokemon missing from the Space World demo, that being Heracross. So it is possible that Plux was later turned into Heracross. Going back to the baby Pokemon, we have Para, who again was also cut from Generation 1. Para is not a translation, but the Pokemon's real Japanese name, and it was a pure bug type Pokemon who evolved into Paras at level 12. One cool thing about Para is that it seems to fit in with the evolutionary line, as Parasect is a Pokemon who has been completely taken over by a parasitic mushroom. Also cut from both Generation 1 and 2 is the baby evolution to Ponyta, with its name translated translating to Petite Unicorn. It would evolve into Ponyta at level 20, and it was categorized as a pure normal type Pokemon, unlike Ponyta and Rapidash, who were both pure fire types. But again, this could just be because it was a demo. Before the introduction of Overquill, Quillfish was supposed to have an evolution in Generation 2, with its name translating to Numbness Pufferfish. It would evolve into Quillfish at level 18. Though it is categorized as a pure water type Pokemon, there is speculation that it was supposed to be water and electric type, as Quillfish is also categorized as a pure water type before becoming water and poison. I've seen comments from people saying that they think this could have become Wishcash in Generation 3. And others say it may have become Stunfisk in Generation 5. Let's talk about Creepy Bellsprout. This Pokemon was supposed to evolve from Weepinbell using the cut evolutionary stone called the Poison Stone, which would also evolve other Pokemon like Gloom into Blossom and Eevee into Umbreon, both of which were also poison types at the time. Though both Blossom and Umbreon made it with different typings, this one didn't. There was also cut content from the Sprout Tower, as it was supposed to be 9 stories tall compared to the 3 stories in the final game. There are fans who believe that this Pokemon was supposed to be connected to the Sprout Tower storyline. This Pokemon also has a unique cry assigned to it, and I'll play that for you now. A Pokemon that ended up getting cut at the very end of Gold and Silver's production is this cut pre-evolution to Girafarig. Just a little bit of context for those who don't know. Girafarig's name is a palindrome, meaning it is read the same forward and backwards. And in the early days of Girafarig's creation, so was its sprite, having 2 heads being the same forward and backwards. Its cut evolution seems to be the same in that regard. It would evolve into Girafarig at level 29, and many believe it to be based on Siamese twins. It was a dark and normal type Pokemon, which was also the case for Girafarig at the time. Although it was cut from the game, we also have another sprite dating back to June 1999, 2 years after the demo and right before the release of Gold and Silver in November of 1999. This Pokemon also has 2 unique cries for it that I almost forgot to include. One is from April of 1999, and the other one is from August of 1999. So here you go. Then we have this Pokemon, which was a cut baby form of Tangela. This Pokemon would evolve into Tangela at level 22 and was a pure grass type Pokemon. Aside from it having 1 eye and the beta sprite being green, there really isn't much more to say about it. But now we're moving on to cut Pokemon who are not really cut Pokemon. These are Pokemon that were cut from Generation 2 but would later appear in other games. Some people view these as beta Pokemon and not actual cut Pokemon, but they were technically cut from Gold and Silver, and because of that I will include them. The first one is actually a continuation of the last Pokemon we talked about, being the evolved form of Tangela, today known as Tangrowth. Back in 1997, Tangrowth was a pure grass type Pokemon and would originally evolve from Tangela at level 44 before returning as Tangrowth in 2006 with the release of Gen 4's Diamond and Pearl. This is also a little bit of a weird one. Some people call it Beta Bayleaf, some claim it to be an entirely different thing. Regardless, the name translates to flower mole, and it was supposed to evolve from Chikorita, most likely between level 14 and 18. You see, its evolution data was actually removed from the playable demo, so we don't know exactly when it would evolve. And it was a pure grass type Pokemon. Its design is confusing, but it appears to be based off of Chikorita blossoming into a flower, later becoming Meganium. Then we have the baby evolution to Mr. Mime. Its name seems to take inspiration from Barrier and Ballerina. It was categorized as a pure normal type who would evolve into Mr. Mime at level 15. In Generation 4 we did get the baby evolution to Mr. Mime, and that being Mime Jr. Then we have the cut evolution to Lickitung, with its name meaning to lick. It was a pure normal type Pokemon who would evolve from Lickitung at level 32. Lickitung would get its evolution in Diamond and Pearl, being Licky. And the last Pokemon in this section, and probably the most popular, is Leafeon, known in 1997 as Leafy. It used to have a completely different design with roots for legs, and it was a pure grass type Pokemon that would evolve from Eevee using a Leaf Stone. Just like Generation 1, Generation 2 had plans for 3 evolutions. Now we're moving on to unique Pokemon that were cut from Gold and Silver who were not part of any evolutionary line. And what better place to start than with the cut starter Pokemon? Starting off with the cut fire type line. Its name when translated means fire bear, and it was a pure fire type Pokemon. Just like with Chikorita, we don't know for sure when it would evolve, but we could expect it to evolve between 14 and 18. But you might recognize the sprite from somewhere. You see, it seems like the design for this Pokemon would later turn into Teddiursa, if we compare the 1999 sprite to the one from 1997. It would, however, evolve into this Pokemon, with its name translating to Volcano Bear, and it was also a pure Fire-type Pokemon, and it would evolve at level 32. At level 32, it would become this Pokemon, whose name means Dynamite Bear. It was also a pure Fire-type Pokemon, and it appears to be based on a mix of a lion and a bear. This line would of course be replaced by the Cyndaquil line in the finished games, but it's cool to see that one of them might have survived through Teddiursa. So let's talk about the cut Water-type starter Pokemon, who would end up being replaced by the Totodile line, starting with Kurusu, who was a pure Water-type Pokemon with its name translating to Cruz, which would also evolve between level 14 to 18. It would evolve into this Pokemon with its name translating to Aqua, who was also a pure Water-type Pokemon who would evolve at level 32. At level 32, it would evolve into this Pokemon, with its name translating to Aquarius. We might also know why these Pokemon were cut, as they all seem to be based on Plesiosaurs, making them very similar to Lapras, which is based on the exact same thing. Did you know there was supposed to be a Water and Fire-type Pokemon before Volcanion? Well, here it is. The name translates to Bomb Seal, and it was based on a sea lion or maybe even a circus seal, which may have later been used in Generation 7 with the release of Popplio. And one of the most popular cut Pokemon out there, Katora, makes a return, as it was also cut from Generation 1. Katora translates to baby tiger. It's obviously based on a tiger, and it was a pure electric type Pokemon who would evolve at level 35. At level 35, it would evolve into Raitora, meaning thunder tiger. It was also a pure electric type Pokemon. In Generation 1, there was a third stage evolution to the Katora line, but we only have the back sprite of that Pokemon, as it doesn't seem to have been planned for Pokemon Gold and Silver. However, an interesting theory regarding the Katora line is that they may have been used as inspiration to Raikou, though this is only a theory. Muneo Saito, who designed the legendary beast, have never said anything about this, and no other information other than the sprite similarities supports this. There was also a cut Water-type line starting with Manbo 1, with its name translating to Ocean Sunfish. This Pokemon was a pure Water-type Pokemon based on a sunfish. What's cool about this line is that they appear to be based on sea creatures that live deeper in the water with each stage of evolution. At level 19, it would evolve into Ikari, which when translated means Anchor Rage, which seems to be based on both an anchor and a shark. Unlike Manbo 1, Ikari was a water and steel type Pokemon, who may have later inspired the creation of Sharpedo in Generation 3. But Ikari itself might actually be based on the cut shark Pokemon known as Jagu from Generation 1, who was first showcased in the Satoshi Tajiri manga titled Satoshi Tajiri, the Man Who Created Pokemon. At level 38, it would become this Pokemon, with its name translating to Grotesque. This Pokemon was also a water and steel type Pokemon based on a deep sea creature. This Pokemon may have led to the creation of Huntail in Generation 3. We also have a cut cat Pokemon. The name is supposed to represent the Japanese sound of a ringing bell. This Pokemon was a pure dark type and was based on a kitten with a bell on its collar. It also reminds me a little bit of my cat, which of course means that I think this is the cutest thing ever. This Pokemon and its evolution were female only. It would evolve into this Pokemon at level 28. Its name is supposed to represent the Japanese sound for a cheerful humming. If you don't know what that means, think about how you write the word boom for when something explodes. There is also a line of ice-type Pokemon. Its name translates to Wolfman. This Pokemon appears to be based on a werewolf, though some believe it's wearing a wolf-like coat to hide its real appearance, similar to what Mimikyu would do in Generation 7. At level 35, it would evolve into this Pokemon, also a pure ice-type, with the name meaning War Werewolf, though the fan-created names for both of them are Wolfman and Warwolf. Then we have this Pokemon based on a Straw Doll. Its name is a combination of To Be Cursed and Straw Doll. It is a pure ghost-type Pokemon based on either a Chinese Straw Doll or a Voodoo Doll, or maybe both. One interesting thing about this Pokemon is that it learns to move Curse at level 100, and it appears that this was supposed to be its signature move. It's known as Nail in the demo, and this Pokemon is the only one that learns it, not even its evolution, which we will talk about soon. The animation we have for Curse today might be a reference to this Pokemon as well, but it evolves starting at level 1, which I think that that would make it the only Pokemon that naturally evolves at such a low level. It evolves into this Pokemon, whose name is a combination of Kyonshi and Panda. It is also a pure ghost type Pokemon based on a panda, obviously. There is a lot of lore as to what this thing might be, including a form of Chinese zombie vampires, but that's far too out there to include in this video. The final Pokemon from the demo is this, known as Turban. I made a short about this thing a long time ago and it led to a bunch of interesting comments. But yes, the thing at the end of Slowbro's tail was supposed to be a Pokemon of its own that wasn't Shellder. In the demo, the Pokemon is a pure water type with no evolutionary lines. But this is from a beta, so it might be that it was supposed to be related to Slowpoke or more likely Shellder. It could be that this was supposed to be a branched evolution alongside Cloyster, but as it stands, Turban is a Pokemon of its own with no evolutionary links. And with that, we have covered every single cut Pokemon from the 1997 Gold and Silver Space World demo. But we're not done just yet. See, these Pokemon are Pokemon you can find online pretty easily. But there is still a lot more Pokemon to cover that most of you probably didn't even know about. These Pokemon comes from an internal backup dated May 6, 1998. And just like everything else in this video, links can be found in the description if you want to check them out yourself. Sadly though, these sprites don't offer much information. It is very similar to a lot of the cut Pokemon from Generation 1, with only black and white sprites, no names, no typings. Therefore, I will quickly go through most of them and what they're probably based on. First off, we have this eel-looking Pokemon, possibly meant to be a pre-evolution to Grotesque that we talked about earlier. A fox-like Pokemon that bears some similarities to Fennekin. And then we have this weird happy ball. He's just a happy little guy. A slightly different ball that appears to be its evolution. It's just a happy little guy. And then we have a happy pear-shaped thing that appears to be its final evolution. Then there's also this thing which could be a branched evolution of the two balls, just two happy little guys. What appears to be an elephant, and no, this is most likely not Donphan, as Donphan seems to already be finished within the same files. It is possible, however, that this is the elephant found within Pokemon Red and Green, which was first revealed in the Satoshi Tajiri, the man who created Pokemon manga. It does also have some similarities to Great Tusk from Scarlet and Violet. There is also this puppy Pokemon that looks very similar to Pooty, but it has a horn on its head. There also appears to be a middle stage evolution to Natu and Satu. A very messed up bird, which might be a kiwi bird that got hit by a truck. A scorpion Pokemon, which may have later become Gligar. There's another bird, but this one seems like it has a musical note on its head. And what is possibly its evolution, shaped like a musical note, which could have inspired the creation of Chatot. This Pokemon seems to be related to Quillfish. It might be an early version of the Quillfish evolution we mentioned earlier. There's also a boar-like Pokemon, who could have inspired Pokemon like Pignite or Emboar. This Pokemon looks like something I've seen before, but I can't wrap my head around what it actually is, so if you recognize it, please leave it in the comments because I need to remember. A weird rabbit-like Pokemon, a sort of snake Pokemon with very large eyes, and then there's yet another bird, a gargoyle-like Pokemon whose head seems to resemble that of Aerodactyl. Then there are two fish Pokemon, both of which looks like early evolutions to Manbo 1. They're also numbered right after Manbo 1. This one appears to be some sort of ninja squirrel, a fox-like Pokemon that may have later become Furret, another bird Pokemon that seems to be based on a stork, and it looks very similar to Bombardier from Scarlet and Violet, a squid Pokemon that could be the cut squid Pokemon from Generation 1, a bug cocoon-like Pokemon that may have later become Burmy or even Pineco, a moth-like Pokemon that is most likely the evolution to the cocoon, and might have become Mothim. There's also a koala Pokemon, which could very well have returned as Komala. Genuinely, I have no idea what this thing is. But we have more birds! This one looks like it has some sort of a megaphone for a beak. A frog Pokemon with a horn on its head. A hippopotamus, I think. A giant skeleton. What looks to be a bunny Pokemon with large ears. It looks a lot like the cut bunny Pokemon from Generation 3. There's also a mosquito-like Pokemon, and some sort of plant-like Pokemon. A bug Pokemon that may have later become Yanma. A dinosaur Pokemon that seems like it's wearing an egg as a helmet, looking very much like Cranidos. A cherry blossom Pokemon that could have later become Cherim. An armored dinosaur Pokemon. A bird or fish that seems to be based on a flying fish. And that leaves us with only two. which I will cover individually. The first Pokemon is Pokemon 349. What makes this Pokemon special is that this could be the scrapped box art legendary for Pokemon Silver. For the very few of you that don't know, Lugia was a last-minute addition. It was not planned for the Generation 2 Pokemon games. It was exclusively made for the second Pokemon movie, meaning at the time of the Space World demo, Lugia didn't exist. And what Pokemon was supposed to be the box art legendary for Silver has always been a mystery. It appears to be based off of some sort of canine. Out of all the cut Pokemon from Generation 2, this one fits the criteria for legendary more than anything else. It's also very close to Ho-Oh, with Ho-Oh being number 347. Then there is the cut boat Pokemon, number 344, which might be Beta Lugia. A lot of Pokemon fans will absolutely refuse this idea, because it's been stated multiple times that Lugia was created by Takeshi Shudo specifically for the second Pokemon movie, which is correct, but one part of that is wrong. I am a huge fan of Shudo's work, but he did not create Lugia. He created the concept of Lugia. Lugia was designed by Ken Sugimori, and he might have used this boat Pokemon to create Lugia based on Shudo's instructions. So this very well could be Beta Lugia, even if it was never intended to be. And with that, we have covered every single cut Pokemon from Generation 2. As always, I hope you enjoyed and I hope you found the video interesting.